Okay, we're good to go? Okay, thanks, Melissa. Dr. Virginia Clinton Lizelle and myself, Stacy Gilpin, are super excited to be here today. We're going to do our presentation, OER as a tool for social justice. Just some quick introductions. I'm an assistant professor at the College of St. Scholastica in Duluth, Minnesota. And I'm also a third year PhD student at the University of North Dakota. And that's how I became acquainted with Dr. Clinton Lizelle. She's my advisor, and she brought me into the world of OER. I had been dabbling in it a bit, but she invited me to participate in the book chapter, which we'll talk about in a bit. That's really the foundation for our presentation. And she also encouraged me to apply to be an OER fellow. And so I'm excited to be a 2021 OER fellow and just continue to learn and grow in this really amazing field and with really amazing people. Dr. Clinton Lizelle, would you like to say?
Sure. Yep. Hello, everybody. I am an assistant professor at the University of North Dakota. I have the honor of getting to advise Stacy. And this year, I'm one of the primary researchers for the Open Education Fellowship, along with John Hilton, David Wiley, and Lane Fisher. I myself was an Open Ed Fellow in 2017 to 2018, and I'm thrilled to be able to help mentor the next generation of researchers. This presentation is a collaborative effort that was prompted by a call for chapters for a collection. A call for chapters on a book on social justice in higher education. So go ahead, Stacy.
Yeah. Someone in the chat had asked about making this full screen. I was planning to do it this way because we're going to be popping in and out of the screen here. And I'll share some more resources too if you wanted to be able to look at the slides and things as we go through. That's what the plan was anyway. And if we need to kind of modify that, we can. But I think you'll kind of see what we mean as we go. So thanks, Dr. Clinton Lizelle. Yes, this is what Dr. Clinton Lizelle was alluding to, is what we'll be talking about today and what we'll be working with all of it really comes from our book chapter, Teaching and Learning for Social Justice and Equity in Higher Education. And our part of it is open educational resources as tools to foster equity. And we collaborated with Elizabeth Lazurski. She's a faculty at the University of North Dakota, and Bree Rhodes. She's one of my, we're peers in the Educational Foundations and Research PhD program at the University of North Dakota. And Dr. Clinton Lizelle and I were talking a little bit earlier, and we don't know at this time if our book chapter will be open access, but we're really hoping that it will be. We are super excited to be here today. I wanted to do just a quick check-in. I know we have a lot of people here and people are coming in just to see who's all here. And I also think this is a good time, Melissa, if you could throw, you just did, the document that we'll be kind of working off of today that have all the links and all the resources that you'll need as you leave here. And if you even wanted to make a copy of the Google Doc and take your own notes in it today, that would be great. So I'm going to go to that document now. I believe it's this one here. And it says participant resources on it. And so I'm going to be mainly working today out of the workshop resources document, but also we included the slides here with speaker notes. If you'd like those to kind of follow along or print them off after. And then we also included a version here that has 3 slides per page with a spot to take notes. So if you click on the workshop resources, that will take you to this right here. And I have some of my notes on here, just that one. But let's get to know one another. So I have a poll right here, poll 1. If you click on it, it's going to take you to a Mentimeter. And it's the questions that are listed on our slide here. And just go ahead and share your answers. And let's just get to know one another just a bit. It helps us as we kind of go through things. And I'm going to present, and we have lots of people in here already. It's always a magical kind of navigation to keep all these things going. So we'll just give folks a few more seconds to kind of identify themselves, and please pick all that apply. It's fun to see who we have here. And you might be able to hear the rain in the background here. I don't know if you can or not. It's pouring pretty hard in Duluth, Minnesota. Okay, so a lot of folks in higher education. Oh, exciting. We have a K-12 person with us, librarians, good chunk there, students, teachers, instructors, researchers. Oh, thanks, Lara. Good idea to throw that in the chat to the poll.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
It takes a community sometimes.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So I think we'll have quite a large group, maybe 10 more seconds or so, and we'll kind of see where it lands. I think you get the idea of kind of who we're here today with. Okay, so great, exciting to have everyone here and have a little bit of a feel for who we have joining us and things. So cool, I'm gonna close out of this, I think. Let's see how we're gonna come out of that. I'm gonna have to go this way. Okay, just a little bit more about this document, I think, while we're here. So this is the one that was thrown in the, this is the one that you got to remember from. This was thrown in the chat originally by Melissa and me a couple, and me once. And then here's a document we'll primarily be working out of. So you can see here, we'll kind of refer back to this as we have some pauses and things throughout as we spend time working on things. So it'll be a workshop where Dr. Clinton Lozelle and I share a little bit. We'll share some resources, we'll talk through things, and we'll give you a chance to work on things. And you're more than welcome during some of those kind of down times or work times to talk with us about things. We'll be here. And we just really want it to be something that benefits everyone here kind of where you're at. So here we go. So how can, just got to move my bars a little bit here, sorry. So how can OER help with social justice? So that's why you're here. You saw our title. And what we're going to be talking about for the next 45 minutes, 50 minutes or so really is a process and also a goal to achieve a fairer society, which involves actions guided by the principles of redistributive justice, recognitive justice, or representational justice. And I think Lambert says it very well. And the principle of redistributive justice involves allocating resources to support those who have less. So while recognitive justice involves recognition and respect for culture and gender differences, and representational justice involves equitable representation and political voice. And this is from the work of Lambert also. So what we'll do is we'll use this framework to not only summarize the research related to OER, but also to illuminate the ability of OER to promote social justice by supporting more equitable access to higher education and by providing opportunities to increase the visibility of and voices of marginalized communities and groups. So let's go ahead and pop right into kind of the first part of our framework, which is redistributive justice. And remember, that has to do with allocating resources to support those with less. So thinking about the cost of textbooks, materials, things like that. And we're not going to spend a ton of time on this because this is well known at this point. However, just a few nuggets. So students historically underserved in higher education are more adversely affected by expensive commercial materials. Not a huge surprise. Meta-analysis and systematic reviews indicate the course grades are similar and withdrawal rates are lower with OER. So some good news there. And then first generation and low income college students benefit more from OER, huge. Good news there. And it has to do with that access hypothesis. So kind of removing a barrier on the cost of textbooks improves access. Just a bit more kind of about this principle. So why does that matter? Well, I'm pretty sure I'm preaching to the choir here that we are. But the increasing costs affect students because they're often forced to enroll in fewer courses because they can't afford course materials or withdraw from courses because they don't have the book. I mean, I don't know how many times in the undergrad classes I teach, even at a private institution, I have students sharing textbooks and things like that. And even $300, which can easily be the cost of a single textbook, can keep a student from graduating. So if we can remove that barrier, why not? And then just a visual here, kind of, once again, kind of asserting the case for OER as far as it goes with this idea of redistributive justice. And you can see over the past, I'm not sure what I got going on here on my screen. But you can see, I wonder if I click something up here, it looks like it's drawing or something, some green lines. Can you see that?
Yeah, I think that accidentally got drawn on there during the poll.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah, we can all just pretend my 3-year-old went nuts on it.
Sorry, I scribbled all over the screen somehow. Um, anyway, so
Kelsey, advice on how we clear it?
I think it might be a Zoom annotation kind of feature. So
I
If
wonder
you
when
go
I
to
drug
like
my
the,
I wonder when I drug my toolbar or my screen. I was moving the images. I was redoing my toolbar if I did something.
yeah, if you go to the toolbar, there should be a pull down menu where you can like
I-
reset the annotations.
Let's see. I think let's see. Undo. Let's see. Oh, I'm not getting it. Well, maybe when we go into when we pause and have some work time, we'll mess with it.
Thanks, John.
Okay. So sorry about that. Anyway, textbook comparison, just really quick. You can see how over the years, the cost of textbooks along with tuition have been on the rise. And you can actually see at some points, textbooks have been above the cost of tuition. So just really kind of asserts once again that this is a need and an issue, and there is something that we can do about it with looking at OER. So I have, okay, gonna pop just over to our workshop document. Oh, I've got something going on with my annotation tool. What do I say?
Ah, there you go.
Okay, I got it stopped. Crazy.
We'll figure it out during breakout rooms.
We'll fix it.
We're good. Yeah.
Oh, first time for everything. So under retributive justice, we have 3 resources here. We're not going to, like I said, pause right now to look at retributive justice. We want to spend more on recognitive and representational. But just so you know, there's some resources here. And when we have a chance to pause and work through things, you might want to check some of those out. Okay, I'm going to pop back here and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Clinton Lizelle.
You want to delete the comment?
What happened in the comment?
Okay, so recognitive justice. This is about more than just being open. We know that having books be free helps students, but what is the difference between being open and being free? And this is where we can really empower students through recognitive justice. Recognitive justice involves recognition and respect for gender differences. And there's been studies comparing open textbooks to commercial textbooks. Shauna Brandel did a great one with political science textbook and found that across textbooks, we're seeing a lack of diverse representation. And OER aren't necessarily any better inherently, but the key difference with an OER is that it is editable. So you can fix this problem yourself. This allows for more visibility and recognition. So if you can go to the next slide, Stacy. So for example, here's a textbook where it refers to slaves being forcibly brought to North America as workers. With an OER, you can edit that out for more inclusive language. And next slide. This was an example that I saw on Twitter, actually, where somebody shared that her marketing textbook used the phrase consumer tribe. And then there's also the phrase tribal marketing, which is clearly not an inclusive term. And it changed it to consumer fan club in her book. And you're able to do that because of, can you go over to the Creative Commons? You can skip over to 12. Because of the Creative Commons licensing. If you really want to know the nitty gritty of Creative Commons, I highly recommend taking one of Cable Green's courses on this. But basically the short version is that at the very least, you have to give attribution for the work. But if it's just the attribution license, then you can edit, you can remix, as long as you credit the original author. Things get stricter the more little icons they have in it. And it is, in some cases, a situation where you aren't allowed to edit them. So it is important to check with that. However, things such as OpenStax and things that are in the Open Textbook Network, they are going to be editable and remixable. So if you can go on to the next one. The benefit of this is that we have something called the 5R permissions of OER. Oh, librarians are also a great resource. Thank you for bringing that up. So David Wiley and John Hilton talk about OER enabled pedagogy, and that's when you have teaching and learning practices that are possible only through the permissions of OER. So the difference with an OER and free is that you have these 5Rs. You can keep your copy, you can use it in a range of ways, you can adapt it, modify it, and improve it. And through that adapting, modifying, and improving, you can do things like edit out language that is inappropriate. You can tie in diversity. You can tie in local connections. You can change the pronouns in your book in order to have it be using they, them instead of gendered pronouns. You're also able to remix, so you can produce a better quality document. For example, perhaps you like the cognitive chapter of one psychology textbook, but the other chapters from another one, you can put them together. And then you're allowed to share. So this community of sharing allows for more voices to be heard, and allows for, as we'll later go on with representational justice as well. So if you can go to the next slide, Stacy. This is why open is better than just free. Both free and open allow for students to have access to educational materials without cost. However, if you have a free resource that has a commercial copyright, you don't have those 5Rs. This is one of the big drawbacks when people talk about, well, could we just do an all-inclusive textbook package as part of students' financial aid or as part of their tuition? And this is where open is the advantage. So you can take the next part, Stacy.
Thank you, Dr. Clinton Lizelle. I am going to, we're going to try things out now a bit. And so Dr. Clinton Lizelle shared some great examples of some different things that you can do. And so we want to just take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the tools that she talked about, resources, and then give you a chance to play around with it. So I'm going to pop over to our workshop document here. And looking at recognitive justice, some resources we have here. I just threw in the Creative Commons, and information will take you to that website. I'm gonna load it here. And if you haven't created an account, you can go ahead, it'll prompt you to do that. I'm logged in. I don't have my pictures not showing for some reason though. And the great thing is if you create an account, then when you go ahead and find things, you're able to save them in a spot so you can come back and find them later and things quickly like that. And then if you go ahead and do any remixing and revising and things, you can actually save them there too. So you would type in whatever you were looking for, and you can do some different filtering and things like that. That's something you might want to play with if you haven't. Something that I found just as an example was this faculty OER toolkit. We decided to pick it because it's something I think everyone here might be interested in. It's not content specific, but I pulled it off the OER Commons, and it was able to be downloaded as a Word document, which was really cool. I put it in here though. For some reason, it ended up coming in as a PDF, but you can kind of get an idea. Sorry, it's always slow loading when you are on the internet and Zoom going and sharing your screen. But you can kind of see here, if you go through at the beginning, early on, you can see where it talks about the permissions. And so if we go back, for example, to this slide here, it's you can do all sorts of things with it as long as you give credit. They credit the name as requested by you of the authors and things like that. So that's pretty cool. And then sometimes you might go and find something, so thinking about ways that you can edit it then, because that was one of my first questions is, well, I have this PDF, like how can I go ahead and, remix it and revise and things like that. Well, Acrobat Pro is a great way. You can upload it to a Google Doc. And like I said, sometimes, sorry about that there, it will give you a Word doc too. OpenStax is another one. I'm sure many of you have heard about that. But when you're thinking about recognitive justice, here's a link to the web page. If you haven't been there, you can also create an account. I have one here, and click on the subjects. You can just go to all, and you can see just a quick way to see the different kinds. This still must be loading here. Yep, there we go. The different texts they have. For some reason, it must be Dr. Clinton Lizell's influence. I always go to psychology. You've had an influence there, that's for sure. And then you can see here, you can download a PDF, and there's really cool instructor and student resources and different things like that. And then it talks down here about the Creative Commons licensing and things like that. Then, oh, this is really cool here too. I was playing around on OpenStax the other day and I came across this, and I pulled it in here. Just thinking about that recognitive justice, and just kind of elaborating a little bit more on some of the things that we spoke about earlier about what can you do to improve the representation and diversity in materials. And there's just a really nice table here that gives some examples about what could you do with illustrations and photos, names, and different things like that. And then Dr. Clinton Lizell, would you just speak a little bit about Google Images?
Sure, this might be something where it's easier if I share my screen.
And maybe if I stop the share, maybe the green scribbling will go away. We can only hope.
All right, folks. Hello, everybody. So if you go to Google Images, which I'm sure many of us are familiar with, I just searched for student. If you go over to tools and you go to usage rights, you can find images that have a Creative Commons license. So for example, if you want to be able to show more student diversity, or, diversity in terms of race, ability, status, gender, discipline, you name it, you're able to look through here, find images, and then you can replace the images in your book with an image that you think would be more representative of your students. And it can be, any number of images that you want to use. So for example, I was going to search, but I just had a flashback of a time I just searched on the fly in front of my students, so I'm not going to do that. This I've pre-vetted, but that is a very quick and easy way to check for the Creative Commons license. There's also, you can get a CC search button on a Chrome bar, and then you can search the Creative Commons and look there for images and other resources that are available. So that is one way that you can have that recognitive justice and be able to give attention to groups that are not getting adequate recognition in your textbook or in your materials in general. All right, Stacy, I've stopped sharing. So you can, we're on the breakout rooms now, so, right?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking that maybe we'll just let people kind of work on their own if they want to, and we'll kind of be here if they want to chat and things, because it might be some time to explore.
Great.
I wanted to just acknowledge some great things that have been going on in the chat while you were speaking. Yes, it looks like Dawn Nikki just reasserted about the rubric. Yes, it seems like really cool. And then Allie shared a resource for free stock photos of Black people. So lots of really great things going on in the chat. It's hard for me to keep up with it right now, but maybe just take a look. Some amazing resources for images and things like that. So, yep, I'm going to share my screen again here. I hope that I have gotten rid of the scribbling. I have taught hours and hours of Zoom courses over the past 2 months, and that has never happened. So it's a first time for everything. So, yep, we're at the point where we're going to slide down here. Suspend. I was kind of looking at the clock. I was thinking about maybe 10 minutes or so. Just kind of playing around with things a little bit. And Dr. Clinton Lizelle and I will be hanging out here. And if you want to talk with us, you want to talk in the chat and just play around with things and kind of based on what your needs are, we'll let you do that. And then we'll kind of give like a couple minute warning when we're going to come back together. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to address Karen's question about the OER process. How it typically works is, so with a commercial textbook or commercial materials, the publisher finds an author, maybe gives them an advance, but then the author makes royalties off of the sales, and the publisher makes makes money as well. But with open textbooks, they're typically foundation funded or institution funded or grant funded. And the expectation is that it is funded on the upfront, on the creation process. And then going forward, they are freely available for anyone to use. So that's basically how the system works with an open textbook and OER in general, as opposed to commercial images.
That's a great question. I was curious about that too, and hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I knew this because it was part of my OER training when I became part of the OER working group at the University of North Dakota. I'm not by any means a copyright or a finance expert or legal expert. So that's just my general understanding of how it works. Well, what we're talking about here with the editing, revising, and remixing, it's to improve and personalize materials that are already created. The whole process of creating materials is another workshop. And yeah, I've edited and remixed materials and am delving into open pedagogy, but I have never written an open textbook or anything like that. That is a sabbatical goal in the future, though. Abigail, where are you from?
A very, very small rural community outside of Jamestown.
Oh, what's it called?
Wimbledon.
Okay. My brother used to live in Montpelier.
Oh, yep. We used to play them in sports back in the day. My mother is a professor emeritus at what used to be Jamestown College and is now the University of. So it's not too often you get in one of these big conferences and you hear someone reference University of North Dakota or anywhere in North Dakota.
Yes. Well, I'm not only a professor at the University of North Dakota, but I have been raised here, and both my parents are alumni, and so is my sister.
Oh, nice.
And so my stepchildren, my stepkids are going to be going here. So shout out for UND. And yes, Kathy, that is very true. OER does not necessarily mean textbooks. I apologize. I do have a bit of a textbook bias because I'm a reading research scholar. So textbooks have always been kind of how I gravitate, but it can be any teaching and learning tool.
Yeah, and if you go onto the Creative Commons, especially, I mean, there's all sorts of materials and things on there that are definitely not textbook type stuff. So great point.
Yes, as far as creating the textbooks, there's now a federal grant program that started it, the Open Textbook Pilot Program. And some books have been created that way. There's private foundations that have funded them. There's institutions that have funded them that paid their faculty to develop it. So it varies tremendously. It's a much more financially diverse field than commercial resources, which are all funded by students buying the materials.
Mhm. And something that I've recently done with a course, and I'm not sure exactly how it fits into things. I don't know if I've even shared it with you, Dr. Clinton Lozelle, but
Oh.
I took my behavior theories and analysis course, and I wasn't super happy with the text. And I don't know, maybe there's a good text out there I could use for it. It's a course that teaches like the functional behavior assessment and behavior intervention plan process. And so what I did is I had lots of materials I had been finding just different places online that were free and available to use that were high quality in my mind. And so I curated some videos and different like articles too, scholarly articles and blogs and different things, and put that in. And that's what I use to teach that course now. And so I don't have a text for the course, all of it's open access, and I created a document kind of linking it out. So I don't know where that falls in.
That's more of a mix. I mean, my program evaluation course uses a lot of freely available government materials through the
Yeah,
CDC
yeah,
and other
yeah,
organizations. So they're free but not open.
yeah.
But
But
in
it's
that, I
okay.
mean, free is still beneficial in that my my students don't have to pay money for
Well, they
them,
don't-
and those particular resources they can keep too. It's not a temporary electronic resource.
Right, right, right.
Thank you, Allie. Yes, the difference between zero textbook costs and OER, that is very true.
Mhm.
And that's why we tried to focus this workshop on the affordances of open for social justice beyond the cost savings.
Mhm.
Because we all are pretty aware of how cost savings can help out students, but how can we leverage the licensing to help out students?
Mhm. Yeah, great. Like lots of good information being shared in the chat.
Yeah. No, that's a very important point, Benjamin. And making an OER, creating an OER, if you're writing a textbook, my feeling is you should get compensated in some way, but not in the tradition. It works better for everyone if we're not doing it in the traditional royalty system. For one thing, students really resent if you are the author on a commercial textbook and require your students to buy it, even though you only get a nickel for every textbook they buy or something like that. Students really resent that. They feel like they're forced to give the professors money.
We have about a minute left or so. So we'll come back together then and we'll
Right.
just do
That's
kind
a
of
good point, Abigail. Yes, an OER can very much be a module. And there's a lot of debate about how, whether or not a textbook is the best way to present information or if it should be modular and curated.
right.
Or if you do a hybrid, you do both. I mean,
Mhm.
that's one nice thing about OERs, you can do a mix.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, this presentation is being recorded and will be available.
Okay, let's go ahead and come back together. And we have a super large group. I'm just going to stop my timer. So it's hard to do individual check-ins, although we do welcome the chat. It's been wonderful. But I'm just going to throw another poll up there. And you can get to the poll if you go to the top of our workshop resources and you click on poll 2. kind of what do you think about remixing and revising? And I'm going to get that poll ready to share here
Thanks, Melissa.
in just a second. So you can be entering them in, and I'm just gonna get my poll 2 to load. And we'll take a look at it. Okay, oh, you guys are awesome. Love it. I pop it up and we got data. Okay, I love that I already use it, but I have new ideas. It's always good to see that. I'm not sure, and I appreciate like the honesty and thinking about that too. I will use it for sure. I need to explore it more. It isn't for me. I would also, we would welcome that too, because you have to think about your needs and your students and whoever you're working with. Melissa, thank you for popping the poll in. Your wonderful support. Okay, so some good kind of feedback about what others are thinking there, and please keep things going in the chat. But I'm keeping an eye on the time here, and I think we're gonna keep on moving. So I'm gonna come out of this and going to pop back in to our presentation here. Okay,
Can I interrupt you quick, Stacy?
Always.
Just the comment about music and sound. I believe Merlot and perhaps the OER Commons has some audio files that are shareable, and YouTube has a filter for things that are shared with a Creative Commons license. And then audio on the Creative Commons search too, if you have the browser link to the Creative Commons. Okay, on to representational justice.
Yes, yes. So now remember that representational justice involves equitable representation and political voice. And so you're going to start to see like there's like a lot of like crossover and kind of blending together of what we talked about so far with this idea. But it's the ability to remix and redistribute, which allows for what is termed OER-enabled pedagogy. You'll also hear the terms on open pedagogy or open educational practices, which I think the key here are teaching practices only possible with OER licensing. And so it allows for the creation of participation by students, and then opportunities to co-construct materials and share stories representing student voices. So some examples just briefly, and then we're going to share a ton more when you have some time to work. But instructors could work with students to develop infographics and videos that they then share with others to use in similar courses. So kind of what we talked a little bit earlier about kind of materials and things not being text. And then using the rights to retain, remix, and redistribute within that. Or students could write introductions to readings in OER text, along with videos and discussion questions, which could then be redistributed. I think that's a really cool idea. And like, once again, these ideas could not have been possible with closed copyrights. So you might kind of be wondering, well, kind of what do students think about open pedagogy compared to traditional pedagogy? Traditional pedagogy is defined as like writing essays and taking quizzes and those sorts of things. And Hilton and colleagues in 2019 found that the majority of students reported that OER-enabled pedagogy was as effective or better than traditional. Lambert also in 2018 asserts such practices also had the potential to support representational justice by providing marginalized groups with the opportunities to co-construct and tell stories rather than having their stories told by others. So a little bit more about examples and kind of how this might work and things. So I want to pop then to our resources document here and go down to our representational justice section. First, though, I want to talk about, like, I've been really dabbling in this for, I don't know, just, I worked at UW Superior for a couple of years, and they were really into OER, kind of, I think it was kind of like a state initiative as far as textbooks and materials and that kind of stuff goes. But then with Dr. Clinton's encouragement, I started playing around a bit more with my courses and thinking about how can I bring some more of this in. And so I've had my students create like a course website related to special education. That's what I teach, disability studies and things. And really like honing it into Minnesota, because I found myself and my students doing all this research about, we know what special ed law is, but we were trying to kind of distill it down to what does it mean in Minnesota. And we were doing this all the time. And I thought, well, why don't we work together and create something that then we can update? So I had my students in one course create this website. And now in my future courses, we use the same website as a foundation, and we continue to curate and build off of it.
Stacey, can I interrupt you quick?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, we got a couple questions about the difference between recognitive and representational justice. There is a lot of overlap with these, but the main difference is with recognitive justice, you're giving them recognition. So this would be changes that the instructor is making to the materials in order to make sure that, I know this is confusing, it represents their students and it represents diversity. Representational justice is that the students get to represent themselves and have voice in the pedagogy, that they have an opportunity to be heard personally, that their voices are part of it, which is where open pedagogy comes in.
So the key when we're thinking about representational, then, Dr. Clinton Lozelle, is that like student voice.
Right, right.
And like that's kind of what I keep thinking in my head as I try to like constantly kind of keep figuring out what,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
But obviously you can't have one without the other.
Right, right.
You know, if you're not going to recognize and respect your students' diversities, then you're not going to be giving them opportunity for representation.
Right, absolutely. We try to like put things in silos, I think, to organize, and sometimes, yes. Okay, so thinking about just some more examples, there's an open pedagogy assignment here I'm sharing. This is just something I'm kind of putting out there that I've been playing around with a bit. And I'm going to try it out next semester with some students and see how it goes. But it's about them creating their own assignment, sharing the assignment under a Creative Commons license, and then doing the assignment and kind of thing. And the idea would be then kind of sharing that and kind of, instead of just doing like a paper that we toss out and never do again, kind of that idea of bringing in the student voices and giving them ownership. Also, you might know the Open Ed group has amazing open pedagogy resources. And so we just wanted to make sure that you had a link to that website and highlight it just a bit. All sorts of different ideas about things that you could do in the area of open pedagogy. I think this has helped me a ton when I started playing around with it a bit here. And then just some, these are some blogs from David. I've never actually said his name out loud. Is it Wiley? Am I saying
It's Wiley, yeah.
Okay, yes, it's funny. You read things and you never say it, but just some, what I found me kind of coming into open pedagogy and learning about it. I threw in 3 blogs that just really broke it down nice, rooted in the research and things, but were very practical that I threw in if you're kind of wanting to play around and learn a little bit more. Dr. Clinton, anything that you would add to this?
I just want to address some of the questions. One, if you could share that release form, Marla, that would be great. As far as my students, it has not been, we've not done things where it's shared publicly. It's things that they share more on a personal level. So they have the agency to decide who they share it with. I obviously would never require students to share things publicly that they don't feel comfortable sharing publicly or that they don't want.
Yeah, and this assignment I was highly encouraging, but definitely, you know, not like make or break, that kind of, you know, kind of thing. And there's resources here about Creative Commons licensing and things and how to license too at the bottom of that assignment.
Yes, so I've had things where students do observations of classes and then they're encouraged to give their analysis and feedback to the person they observed, but I'm not requiring it. So in that way, it's open and it's a renewable resource because it's something that is going beyond the class. You know, other options are that, you know, you can, if it's meant more just for other students, is you could have it on your course learning management system, but still shareable with future students, provided that the students agree to it. So those are options as well. And
we'll continue to kind of answer questions and things here and keep it going in the chat. But maybe we'll take the next, let's see, we end at 55 after the hour. Maybe take the next 7 minutes or so if people are wanting. We won't share anything new here besides answer questions, if that sounds good.
Yes, yes. I did want to answer a question that was a while back about concerned about test bank integrity. Every commercial test bank in existence is available on the internet. They all are. People are able to get them and then they post them online. So there are test banks for some open resources, like OpenStax has test banks, and I would say that they're just as secure as commercial textbook test banks. So yeah, that's just something to be aware of.
But with
I've seen
remixing,
some,
you could just rewrite those questions, right? I'm like,
like, Karen,
And
go ahead.
I don't do a lot of high stakes testing, but when I do, I edit the questions so they're slightly different, so the different answer is correct.
Karen, thank you for your comment too about K-12. I work in teacher prep, and so it's been on my mind a lot. And one of the reasons why I'd like to try out the open pedagogy assignment and encourage students to think about, the Creative Commons is because I think about them in their future working classrooms, right? And like wanting them to be aware of what's out there, and they can decide if they want to do it or not for this class. But I think like that exposure, if nothing else, it's kind of like an added bonus to like this idea of representational justice, right?
Yeah, and thank you, Karen, for speaking up about K-12. That's something where I've really tried to, with an open issue I edited, to get more K-12 people involved. And it's something that open education in general is looking to see how we can better connect with K-12 and better reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's another open pedagogy approach, is to have students write questions themselves. And that's a really good critical thinking exercise for them. And then you can have them use those, have those questions then shared to be used for review and for practice.
So kind of along the lines of them creating assignments,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. Creating videos, I mean, so many different kind of options there. It really makes you start to kind of rethink some of the assignments that we do traditionally.
Yes, yes. And it doesn't speak directly to social justice issues, but students do appreciate having a remixed or edited textbook because they know that the professor took the time to review the materials and that the material is customized for the class. So that is, a way that's effort that the evidence shows students note.
Right, right.
All right, we have 5 minutes remaining.
So in a minute, should we come back together, kind of be in a good place and wrap it up?
I think so.
If you are kind of ready to wrap things up, if you wouldn't mind, we'd just like to check in with you about open pedagogy. So if you would click poll 3 as we're kind of coming back together, and I'm going to open poll 3 here. I'm going to show so that we can see it maybe.
I did just want to answer Ryan's questions. I've just told students that I have cut out material that we're not covering in the class. And I mean, I haven't gone too into detail about like every little edit and decision. No. I have heard of people having students involved in editing a textbook, and in the future, I would really like to explore that. I'm planning to do that in fall of 2021 to update a textbook, and I'm working with an Open Ed fellow now who's going to have her students update the research findings in her textbook.
That
So I'm
sounds
excited to do that. This is the future of open is OpenPed. So
yes, that's super exciting, Dr. Clinton Lozelle. I can't wait to see kind of how that goes. Exciting time. Education. Okay, so what do you think about open pedagogy? Well, I'm not sure. It isn't for me. We have no one there. So looking pretty positive. I mean, there's lots of different, like we talked about, ways to go with it and options, and it's about student voice when we're thinking about that. And so yeah, just go as another couple seconds there. But great, thank you for participating in it. It's just really nice to see, kind of what people are thinking about things. And kind of in closing, thank you so much. Dr. Clinton Lozelle and I would like to continue to hear from you. So, we'll stay on just a bit afterwards. You can contact us on Twitter. We shared that information on the first slide, email, things like that. And I know I learned a ton from the conversation today, maybe more than I shared, but that's part of what learning is and conferences like this. So thank you.
I'm putting my email and Twitter handle in the chat because my research assistant broke her nose, so I need to cover her data collection today.
You're going to be going.
Yeah, I will be assuming the person doesn't cancel on me. I will need to go shortly.
Okay.
Wonderful. I'll stop the recording right there. But the room will still be open for 15 minutes, and you can feel free to have more discussion.
Yeah, I will hang out here.